Respetaré. Repito.
I will respect, I repeat, even in these difficult circumstances, whichever winner the National Electoral Council declares.
In December, Honduran President Xiomara Castro accepted her party's presidential defeat. At the time, they were only trailing in third place with around 20% of the vote. A week later, on Christmas Eve, conservative Trump ally Tito Asfura was declared president-elect. But 3 weeks before the transfer of power, Castro signed a controversial order for yet another recount. And last week, an explosive device put a legislator from Asfura's national party in the hospital. I'm Roman Gressier, the editor of El Faro English. You're listening to Central America in Minutes.
In Nicaragua, the house arrest of Daniel Ortega's brother
relates more to El Salvador and Honduras than to Guatemala. In the case of Guatemala,
they say globalism comes to die at CPAC, but in El Salvador, it's already dead.
Central America in Minutes, an original podcast by El Faro English.
The ruling party Libre has gone from claiming that the election was stolen from them to asserting that second-place candidate Salvador Nasralla was the real winner. And now, as they prepare to leave power, they're doubling down on old claims that both opposition parties are part of a, quote, bipartisan fraud conspiracy. The Honduran army, whose chief is a close ally of Castro, says they will respect the results. And Castro has ordered the transition to occur, while calling the incoming Asfura administration a, quote, de facto government. Last Friday, she signed an order for the National Electoral Council to hold yet another recount, even though there are less than 2 weeks left before Asfura takes office on January 27th. In a post on X, Castro claimed the CNE had failed to count all the votes and to resolve almost 300 legal complaints. The vote count was notoriously chaotic, with 2 out of the 3 big parties claiming fraud. The electoral magistrates failed to resolve a number of complaints. And then there's the Trump factor. 2 days before the election, Trump called on Hondurans to vote for Asfura and granted a pardon to former President Juan Orlando Hernandez, who was imprisoned for drug trafficking in the United States. Weeks later, he invaded Venezuela, an ally of the Honduran government. That helps explain why, in the same post, Castro publicly invited the U.S. administration to a dialogue to, quote, address the electoral situation in Honduras with responsibility, mutual respect, and transparency. As for President-elect Tito Asfura, he's proceeding as if the transfer of power were a settled matter. He met in Washington this week with Secretary of State Marco Rubio and also appeared in pictures with Israeli Ambassador Yael Leiter and Florida Congresswoman Maria Elvira Salazar, one of his major boosters in Congress. Washington is closely watching the Honduran Congress. This latest recount order was originally proposed by President of Congress Luis Redondo from Libre. In December, just days before the official presidential results were announced, the Trump administration revoked Redondo's visa. And Redondo proposed the recount on January 8th. Here's where things get convoluted in true Honduran fashion. The ruling party Libre and the opposition tend to convene separate competing sessions on major decisions, splintering Congress and both claiming legitimacy. One thing is certain, Congress is in recess from the end of October until inauguration in January. And this means that they don't have quorum to pass decrees like the recount. But back in late October, a month before the election, Redondo went ahead anyway and unilaterally installed a temporary commission controlled by the ruling party. The opposition held a separate session and ruled Redondo's commission illegal. Now, right before the inauguration, Redondo and his commission convened Congress to vote on the last-second recount. This, of course, led the opposition to claim that Libre tried to do an end run around Congress to impose the recount. Fatima Mena, a deputy from the Salvador de Honduras party, told El Faro English that Libre's recount order is illegal because it was never recognized with full quorum. But President Castro claimed the opposite, that they had obtained quorum to pass it. But the president of Honduras has a growing credibility problem. 8 countries, including Costa Rica and Guatemala, jointly rejected her recount decree as illegal. This hasn't stopped the ruling party from ratcheting up the temperature. Colectivos, or groups of aggressive Libre supporters organized by party leadership, gathered outside Congress. Gladys Lopez, a deputy from the National Party, was attacked with an explosive device and was sent to the hospital. The opposition claims that the Colectivos authored the attack, whereas Redondo condemned the violence and ordered an investigation of security cameras. The head of the National Police called the act premeditated. Meanwhile, the president of the National Electoral Council dismissed the recount, while Castro's party called on the Supreme Court of Justice to get involved. The dispute over the future of Honduras will likely take us all the way up to Inauguration Day. One second before our last segment of the day. Central American Minutes helps you peek behind the curtain on the contested Honduran elections. If our work has helped bring order to the madness, go to support.elfaro.net to help us keep translating Central America. And now to Costa Rica. 2 purportedly private citizens filed an injunction with the country's electoral tribunal to prevent a visit from Salvadoran President Bukele, who arrived in Costa Rica to inaugurate the construction of a new megaprison inspired by Bukele's Terrorist Confinement Center, or CECOT, in El Salvador. This is all going down just weeks before the first round of the Costa Rican presidential and legislative elections, set for February 1st. President Rodrigo Chaves is the Central American president who has most supported Bukele, applauding his, quote, security model and awarding him state honors. The affinity is mutual. Back in September, Bukele announced in a video that if the next administration, quote, continues with this government's projects, I have no doubt that Costa Rica's best days are yet to come, close quote. In 2024, Bukele and Chaves even announced that they would create a new League of Nations. Chaves has said that he needs extraordinary powers like Bukele in order to govern. The complaint before the Supreme Electoral Tribunal argued that Bukele's visit this week could tip support toward ruling party candidate Laura Fernandez. The opposition echoed these claims. But the TSE rejected the petition, ruling that the 2 citizens hadn't shown concrete personal harm to their rights. But the magistrates did warn that there should be no illegal interference from other presidents in the electoral process. Presidential candidate Claudio Alpizar claims that his party, Esperanza Nacional, has information that during Chavez's visit to El Salvador and now during Bukele's visit, public resources are being used toward Laura Fernandez's campaign. In response, the ruling party, Pueblo Soberano, has accused Alpizar of a disinformation campaign and called for him to be investigated. The irony is that President Chaves has faced prosecutors' scrutiny since his first days in office for alleged violations of campaign finance law. He claimed on January 7th that the Supreme Electoral Tribunal and judiciary are persecuting those close to his government. From Costa Rica to Honduras to Guatemala, electoral tribunals have become political minefields. By seeding doubts before Election Day, the right-wing president of Costa Rica appears to be drawing from the leftist president of Honduras' playbook. Thanks for streaming Central American Minutes, written by Juliana Ramazzini and edited by me, Roman Gressier. All things sound designed by Omnia. This episode was produced with support from the Canada Fund for Local Initiatives. Find us wherever you do your streaming, and we'll be back next week. Hasta pronto.